Hi, this is Misha, and this is my second video post gun collection pickup. And these are just kind of first looks, informals. These aren't ones that I've researched or really looked into. Just kind of going off memory, so forgive me if it's a little light on detail or if I get something wrong. But I just wanted to show you some things. In the past, you've seen this rifle here. This is my Zastava M48 A. And in that collection was also an original Zastava M48. This would be the original version. And then we have a Yugo M24. And I'm not entirely sure, haven't had time to look in. I believe this is a Yugo production, but it might be an FN. Now I do want to do a video comparing this to the Czech VZ24 because there's a lot of similarities, and actually, well, interestingly, I'll just kind of start here just real quick. Originally, the model 1924 was made in Belgium by Herein for the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And that was in the 1920s. And then in the 1940s, Yugoslavia would pick up licensed production of the 1924 at what we know today as the Zastava factory. And this would be just called the M24. Now, interestingly, there was another Mauser 24 in Yugoslavian service in the same time period, the M48A, which was their name for the Czechoslovakian VZ24. Yeah, so we have Belgian production, we had Yugoslavian production, and we had Czech production, and the rifles were all very similar. They had bottom and side sling mounts. They had full upper wood handguards. They had intermediate short rifle length barrels. They all took a standard Mauser bayonet. Quite interestingly, you have this unique style of open-topped sight protector. You have a semi-pistol grip stock. And these guns would have a straight bolt handle, which is pretty distinctive for that day and time because curved wasn't quite standard yet. And finally, we would have a flat machined butt plate. So yeah, we had all those in service. About 800,000 total. I don't think that counts the Czech contract guns though, just so you know. This would be really the first Mausers used in Yugoslavia. They were used extensively during World War II by the Yugoslavians as well as Germans and others. After the war, the 1924s and the M24s would be updated to a certain common standard, basically refurbished after the war. This is what we know today as the M24/47. Now this rifle has one feature of that. It has the side sling removed and plugged. You can see the hole there. That was one thing they did. Now usually when they did that, they would also grind off the excess sling loop in the front, but this one still has it. Also with the 47, they would go to more of a K98 style barrel and sight protector, which this doesn't have. So this is an interesting gun. I do plan on researching it. It's also worth pointing out their Czechoslovakian VZ24s, they also likewise updated. naming these as the M24/52. Well, let's jump on to the M48, and like I said, I'll revisit the Yugo M24 guns in a later video because they deserve it, but this was in the collection and I couldn't resist. But let's get on to the Yugoslavian gun. This is the M48, obviously designed in 1948, and often mistaken for a German Carabiner 98K, and not really. Has some differences. The biggest, okay, this one's got Cosmo, so yeah, we'll pretend like that opened it. I can open it, guys, but when these guns were imported, they were just soaked in Cosmoline. If you've ever bought surplus out of former Yugoslavia, you know what I mean. And this one in the collection, I can say definitively has never been shot in the US because it is not shootable as much. In fact, let me show you this. This is how much Cosmoline's in this bolt. Look at the striker back here. When I pull the trigger, yeah, it does that. I have to kind of help it home. Yeah, that's not going to set off anything. And not to mention there's probably just as much Cosmoline in the chamber. Anyway, I digress. It's just funny. What they did here, and the reason I was going to charge the action, one feature from the FN guns that was carried over to the M48s was this short action, or rather intermediate action. It's a little bit shorter bolt and receiver than a standard 98 Mauser. Now, the Czech VZ24 uses a standard length system. So this is what they copied from the Belgian M24, not the Czech M48A. Also from that, they kept the full length upper handguard, whereas the German guns would only have a partial upper handguard. But they did go to a German style stamped sight protector, full enclosed. Kind of a German style barrel, really, K98 barrel, including the rear sight. They went to the German style of rear sight versus the M24 style here. By the way, the FN and Czech styles are very similar on the rear sides. How they work. We do have the German style pass-through sling slot in the back and a corresponding loop in the front, so no bottom swivels on these, semi-pistol grip. We have the German kind of World War II pattern cupped butt plate, but we don't have the takedown disc in the stock, if you notice. Now this, the M48, is all machined floor plate, trigger guard, barrel bands, so on and so forth. It does have this turn down bolt handle, but they had a different solution. Stop. Sorry guys, I heard the cats crash something in the other room, and then I kind of got a weird smell. I think it was just the heater kicking on. Anyway, as I was saying, the Germans had a turn down bolt handle for the Carabiner 98K. What they did, so you could easily get your hand to it, even in gloves, they recessed the stock. Okay, that works. Zastava had a different solution. They just scalloped and made the bottom of their bolt flat. Also, I've seen a few different curves on these. Some stick out a little more than others, but as you see, so this does stick out a little bit more than your typical German bolt, I would say. But it's still a turn down bolt. Anywho, this was the first M48 to really go, it's the Cosmoline I'm smelling. I activated it by moving it into production. That really amuses me. In 1950, and they would produce this version until 1952 primarily for the Yugoslavian military. Bolt actions weren't hideously obsolete in the early 50s. I didn't mention it, it kind of goes without saying, but these are all chambered for the Mauser cartridge. 7.92 by 57, aka 8mm Mauser. Next up though, they wanted to streamline production of the M48, so they introduced the M48A in 1952. Aside from a little bit of updating of machining, they would introduce a few stamped metal parts, for example, a floor plate like this. So the M48A was an expedient version. The straight M48A was made from 52 to 56 and made for the Yugoslavian military mostly, but also for export. They were trying to get some interest because they were making high-grade Mausers. And then in 56, they went to what we referred to as the M48B. However, receiver markings still kept with the A. The B version started to introduce more stamped parts, and I would consider this, mine here, an early B because it has the stamped trigger guard to go along with the stamped floor plate. Now interestingly, unlike the German style, the floor plate is still removable on this. However, mine here still retains the machined barrel bands, whereas later M48Bs would actually go to stamped barrel bands. And they would produce the M48B up until about 1965, but by that point it was almost exclusively for export. The Yugoslavian military was going to newer guns, although they didn't adopt the SKS until 1959 and the AK until officially 1970, although it was in use a little earlier. There's also the M48BO, and that doesn't mean it was a stinky gun. It just means that the crest, along with other distinctive Yugoslavian markings, were taken off. This is definitely for export to areas that Yugoslavia didn't want to be seen giving firearms to. I believe the Middle East in the 60s. So the M48B and M48BO were in production until 1965 concurrently. They would produce whichever was necessary. By the way, BO just means without markings or unmarked in, well, not Yugoslavian, but Serb, Croat. And that's pretty much the rundown of the M48, M48A, M48B series. How it was derived from kind of a mix of the M24 and the K98 from Germany. And like I said, this was one from their collection. These typically had pretty heavy beech or elm wood stocks, a little more durable than the older 24s, a little thicker, a little beefier. They are a heavy, beefy gun. They're not in my book, and I picked up the M24. Sorry guys, we do that right. Forgot I'd moved it around. I was wondering, it does, and truthfully, doing this does feel heavier. And this ball here, you can definitely tell on the wrist it is. Someone picked it up and like, that's not right. But yeah, that is pretty much where we were at with these. Like I said, this is kind of a look video. So not a K98, but still very interesting, especially if you collect Mausers or Yugoslavian guns. Like I said, it amuses me. Yeah, that's that smell that's coming from that gun. It's kind of that chemical smell. I guess the Cosmoline, as it warms up, the heater probably hit it, and yeah. This gun was just as bad when it came in. This was one of the unissued ones that Century sold off about 2003, 2004. Like I said, a lot of these came in totally untouched. Like a lot of post-war made bolt guns. They were pretty much just made and put in storage. But some were used by Yugoslavian police, and unfortunately some were used during the Yugoslavian Civil War because it is a gun, and a well-made gun. The bluing on these is very nice. In fact, Zastava would make a sporter version of this beginning in the 60s, well into the 21st century. There they have Mauser sporters, and they're very high quality. Alright folks, well, if you have any questions or comments, do please post them below. If you could, like, share, or subscribe, and also check out our Patreon page. And if you haven't, you might check out some of our older videos on Mausers. We're getting quite a playlist of them now. This is Misha, and we will catch you very soon next time.